of one dedicated man, a chunk of the population believes in some hugely controversial ideas about Shakespeare and secret codes appearing in his works. Well, that country is Norway.
En norsk ekspert er engasjert for å finne ut om Shakespeares ting egentlig er skrevet av andre.
Church organist Peter Amundsen.
I titled this installment Clashing Worlds, and I've got I started watching a documentary about Shakespeare or something, and it's quite interesting that
I love Shakespeare too much to keep quiet.
As soon as somebody everything I say is pre-edited and because my thoughts are contained and whatnot. I've talked about this many times. I wonder if this used to happen to Shakespeare, because there's there's several different representatives of Shakespeare in my life, or in my path. And it's interesting. There's female versions, and when I say versions right now, I'm talking about lineages. Lineage of Shakespeare, because you can clearly see the likeness of Shakespeare to Jeremy Kilpatrick and Janice Spies and Brenda What's-Her-Face from co-employment at Roshannis, aka Landmark, aka BB&T. I'm not really certain which name that it ended up with, because it was wavering between Landmark and BB&T during that particular merger. But back to the topic of Shakespeare. And it's interesting that one of the representatives of Shakespeare who crossed my path went by the name Zach, and he wore a Rick and Morty t-shirt. And he also looked like Halston. The designer Halston. I'm going to just about Halston. He seems to have had I have no idea he was very he seemed, at least in that persona, I know that with I'm just too lazy. I'm too lazy to be famous because I drive, therefore I'm lazy in that particular it's not a need. And so I'm lazy. If you want to call me lazy, I'm lazy. I don't choose to maintain aliases and different personas. I have many different points of view on many different topics and information that I gather via research with what little I have now. I would love to make it up to the university library, which I was able to do back in 2014, but more recently I haven't been able to. And only because I keep forgetting that I want to. But anyway, back to my research and Halston. I'm trying to
history fans award-winning documentaries and podcasts that you cannot find anywhere else. Sign up now for a free trial. Fans get 50% off their first 3 months. Just be sure to use the code Chronicle. That's checkout.
And Halston was a clone I wore when I was young, when I was more youthful, and in some pictures, he looks like a shorter statured man, but he's very thin. And he
I have some over here because I'd like to show you.
Yeah, sure.
If I'm right about this, then reality is indeed as
I'm looking at
fantastic
photos of
or
him
more so
right
than
now
the
on
imagination, because the
Bing
implications
Images,
are
I think.
almost terrifying.
Anyway, my friend Terry Weekly
The ones that
was
are
who
tonight.
introduced me to Halston, the cologne, and
Yes, I hope you'll stay with
the
us. You are terrified.
and Ralph Lauren.
Or appalled.
And they were very different fragrances. And still, I'm seeing the likeness to also former President Jackson from way back when. So it's interesting that I'm now noticing a likeness of Halston to Jackson to William Shakespeare, because he seems to have played different roles in my life these days. And I don't know what kind of person William Shakespeare was, but I think Halston was more on the lines of, as in his heyday. Who and what Halston is, if he's still alive, is I don't know. But he had a different vibe, as far as I'm concerned, as far as the message that I received. And to anyone who tries to deny that there's, we get vibes from different people, and someone who's, I'm getting a bad vibe from this guy over here, some other not be getting a bad vibe, so that is part of understanding when I say the dynamics of a room. And people who have been in social situations, it's really ironic to me that myself, as a really non-party going kind of person, and it's funny to me because I had a guest over who I met in 2018, and I had him spend the night. There was no sexual intimacy at all, because I make it clear to everyone I am abstinent. I don't care who says what about abstinence. I think the world is such a disgusting place these days that who could even possibly think about having sex? That's how I feel about it. So if my sexual drive kicks in, I take hold of myself. Now, enough of that. But the funny thing that made me laugh is that and I don't want to blame my guest, because I know that people get into my apartment, and I don't want to make too much fun, because I don't want to tempt Satan into entering and taking more than but the point of the matter is that I had a full bottle of Jameson whiskey, and I don't drink, and I don't drink alcohol. And it was funny to me because when I found this person who I first met in 2018, the other day I'm talking about when I invited him over,
was the greatest English essayist of
he
his age.
reeked of alcohol, and I thought to myself,
Most
gosh, I
scholars
didn't
reject
know
any
this
suggestion
person
that
to
plays
be
in the first folio
or
appear
drink a
in
lot. He's probably saying the same thing because that's what they do.
This is
Anyway, there's my right hand on the Bible, and I don't drink alcohol. And it's not one of those things where, you know, my memory lapsed or I had a stroke in the middle of the night and I, gosh, just don't remember, or I was sleepwalking, and all those cover reasons that the guilty people come up with that I've told about my life. It's
that is interesting that you can relate that.
so when he smelled so much and reeked so much of alcohol, I put the alcohol that I had under my kitchen cabinet because I didn't want to tempt him to even ask me for a drink of it. Don't ask me why I purchased it in the first place because I really don't know. Sometimes I do stuff like that.
Francis Bacon equals 100. TWO.
I had a specific strategy
The codes go deeper.
with other things.
To understand this, we need to go back
'Cause
to the first sentence.
I know somebody needs to get to the truth of who drank the Jameson whiskey, and I really don't care who drank it. I'm just laughing about it. I'm laughing at my own reaction even because after he left, I got under my kitchen sink to put them back out because it's almost like I have it for decoration. And and I'm looking at Halston because Smee's a representative of Jesus because of who he because of Jesus coming through certain people. And one guy, Zach, who wore the Rick and Morty t-shirts, came to Jesus through him as a child, as in he sat on my sofa like Jesus as a little boy. And Zach happens to resemble Halston. So I feel like Jesus is in my presence as I'm giving my testimony about this bottle of Jameson. And maybe because Jesus doesn't want anybody entering my apartment while I'm gone. The only physical beings who have permission to enter my apartment while I'm gone are my biological children. And that would be them by themselves, not with any escorts, because Jesus knows that my children are on my list of welcome guests in my home. And so when my other, unless I'm escort, in other words, the person that I had as a guest was a welcome guest. But I'm talking about people who have entered my apartment while I haven't been here. And my children are welcome in my home, whether I'm here or whether I'm not. And my children, I would be glad to escort to my home. And I would be glad to give a key to my children who came from my womb. Other than that, no one's welcome in my home, not even the maintenance guy. A maintenance person or a representative of the management staff shouldn't feel welcome in my home doing their job as a maintenance person. they should feel like I'm here to fix this. Did. I'm not going to go in your refrigerator. I'm not going to go looking for what booze you might have. I'm not going to go looking for, I don't know. I'm not going to sneak a nap on your bed or on your sofa or in your chair. I'm not going to sneak it. Oh gosh, I need to sneak a shower in really quickly. You know, that kind of thing. A maintenance person comes in, does his work that they're assigned to do, and boom, gone. My children are a different story. But back to the bottle Jason, which came from. So when I realized after my guest, who's I don't know how old he is chronologically speaking, but I met him in 2018, and he looked cold and tired, and I was having a conversation with him. Usually I try to avoid him because
we have two poems.
But this time I was like
the way to the secret
but like I said, he reeked of alcohol, and I didn't want to jump to any conclusions. He seemed calm enough, and I was having a conversation with him, not along the way, but once we got in. I did ask him if he had smoked any meth, because another friend, someone who I consider a friend that I had over, was kind of, I should have realized, but I didn't anyway. So he had to leave. But back to the bottle of Jameson, because this story reminded me of my friend Zach, who, like I said, it was like on my sofa in Aberdeen, it was like Jesus as a little boy appeared through Zach sitting on my sofa. That was in 2018, summer of. And so anyway, when my guest, this person, which wasn't Zach, it's a different person, I simply don't want to say his name. I asked him if he wanted something to drink. He said yeah. So I started to pour pomegranate juice, and realized that I had that Jameson and Kahlua sitting on my counter. And so I really quickly put them under the counter, because I didn't want him to see them. I didn't want to tempt him. I didn't know if he had possibly a hangover from drinking all night the night before and he was reeking of alcohol, or what the story was. I just didn't want to continue or contribute to. So he stayed the night, and then he stayed all the next day, and then he stayed till I don't know what time it was when he left that night, Thursday night.
What does this tell us, other than the fact that Shakespeare has used bacon?
And so he left, and I didn't think anything more about it. And then I don't know, like sometime yesterday, I was like, oh gosh. I kept looking at my counter, and I kept thinking, there's something missing from my counter. There's something missing from my counter. And I said, oh, I can get those out again. And so I brought the bottle of Jameson and the bottle of Kahlua and put it on my counter again. Again, it's like, to me, it's like decoration. It, adds a bit of character to my place, even though it's not really it's a part of my character, because I've been around so many alcoholics and such. But admittedly, it like adds a bit of richness to the room. Just having it sitting on the counter. So I put them back, and I took the bottle of Jameson looked at it, and it's almost completely empty, and it was a full bottle, except for like this much in the bottom, and it reminded me of Zach, and it made me laugh. And
Tragedies. Okay, let's have a look now.
not tall, skinny Zach, because now there's two Zachs. I met a Zach here in Colorado in 2018 or 19. He's not the same kind of character as Zach.
And this is the only
He's all
which word?
about being a model, and
Right, yes.
the other Zach that I met in Aberdeen isn't.
Wouldn't that be more likely, though, if you
And
had the prologue? Wouldn't that have been perhaps the more right, not three. Okay. Of course, it also fits Bendis'
but
theory
that Zach
just below the number 53.
in my Aberdeen apartment, it does the same kind of thing. It's almost like when, I was on probation at the time, and I get angry because they make such a big, huge ordeal about telling me what I'm allowed and not allowed to do when I'm on probation. And I resent the fact that they make a big, huge ordeal about saying you can't drink, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I don't even drink alcohol. And that's the thing that, of all the stipulations, that pisses me off the most. So when I get in my apartment, it's like one of the first, that's part of it. Yeah. It's like, okay, now I have freedom to show and to be who I am, and I can have alcohol in my apartment, and it'll sit there forever, and I have no desire to even touch it for whatever reason. When I cracked that bottle of Jameson open, I poured some on. It's almost like I'm thumbing my nose at the alcoholics when I do that. Admittedly, that is what I'm doing, because they have either gotten under my skin about something, and so I need to do something vindictive. So I took the bottle of Jameson, and even in purchasing it, I think that's part of my a bit of vindictiveness coming out of me. But as harmless as vindictiveness can be, right? And so I cracked that bottle of Jameson open, and I poured some on the on around my apartment door. This was just probably like 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I took my mop and I mopped it up. And so with the same kind of vindictive attitude is kind of, I think, why I purchased the bottle of Jameson in the first place. So anyway, I put it back up on my counter. So that's that story. But back to Shakespeare, which is really why I first, and he does have a likeness to Andrew Jackson, who's on the $20 bill. And
your brain inevitably goes overtime to find some kind of interpretation, but we always
and Andrew Jackson,
what you really do is to
I think, is where the Jackson, and
this is my point. So
and it brings into research I'm trying to in on other similar buildings that were sparsely, and they're sparsely like placed, like strategically placed around here in Boulder, I've noticed. So I'm looking for the original era and purpose for those buildings, because my suspicion is that they were Okay. Thomas Jonathan Stonewall Jackson was a Confederate general during the American Civil War, considered one of the best known Confederate commanders. Years of service, 1846 to 1852. And
the Brotherhood celebrated the power of freedom of speech.
Trying to see if there's a likeness of him to former President Jackson. And there is. It's not as easy to see as like
it made it impossible for people who had big ideas to come together and talk, because the Pope was always sitting in
the Stone
was sitting in the no, or Calvin was sitting in the room.
I should read further as to where that
recruited under a sacred oath
nickname came from, because
so the letters RC.
to be stonewalled is not a good thing. When someone says you've been stonewalled, well, it doesn't really conjure a very good physical feeling. It's like I feel like somebody's throwing rocks and stones at me. And the
codes connected to the Rosicrucians in the first folio. Obsessed with the numerology or
I can't think of the right word because I use the word metaphor so much. Metaphorical? Yeah. The metaphorical meaning of it is when if someone's stonewalling you, it's they're lying to you. And in a constant, like, it's betrayal coming at you, and I certainly know what that's about.
The phrase the letter G.
So right now I'm just trying to find to see, because the more connections I make, the more information is actually revealed. Almost like,
famous poem to the memory of my beloved, the author.
So I really want my
17th word is fame.
Purpose is to discover when this particular building style was originally built, because my suspicion is that those buildings, the house that I was, and this looks like Petrus sitting here, Stonewall Jackson.
It's interesting.
Looks almost like a cross between Petrus and Shakespeare.
Not quite. Ben Jonson mentions the Rosicrucians several times in his writings, so he was familiar.
Like as though Petrus, way back, his biological great-great-grandfather or whoever had a baby with, and I could research that further, but with human trafficking, and you discover that human trafficking has gone on through the ages, and just because something on the internet or even in a history book or even in an old encyclopedia says something doesn't necessarily mean it's a biological connection.
How did you know?
So
philosophers in Paris, he's stopped by government agents. They arrest him. They say
the Confederate Army.
How can I be a Rosicrucian? I'm not invisible.
Because there's also an angle, if that's what you want to say, and I tend to believe that it's true, that the Confederate and the Union Army, they really weren't fighting for what has been propagandized throughout U.S. history. That's my inclination. Because I don't think that there was an actual boundary between slavery and non-slavery between the North and the South. I think that there was something else going on, and slavery became the accepted stand for whatever started the war in the first place. And I know I'm going to tick off a lot of people because that's what everybody's looking for, something to dig their teeth into, instead of saying, it's a theory and we're trying to find the truth. Okay, so cool your jets and let's explore this angle, because there's a lot of things that don't make sense in the world. And if things are propagandized and certainly everybody and anybody knows by now that the media doesn't always report the truth, and or to the truth.
Vengeance. Me of my lawful pleasure she restrained.
So my inclination is that the Union and the Confederate War, the Civil War, was not about, or didn't start about what it professed to be. It probably started in the assayer's office, and the fact all about money and whose money was going to be the accepted form. And it's interesting because it's coming into play into national and international economies, and none of them like a woman talking about the economy, that's for sure. Because for a woman to have, say, a woman who has a women's lib point of view, because I have traditional values. My children are the most important people to me, and I've stated that many, many times. There's no one on earth who I'd rather spend time with than my biological children, adult and minor age, and my grandchildren. No one. There's no one. And there's no one. And if I have a guest in my home, it's not because I'd rather spend time with. It's because my children are somewhere else, wherever they might be, and I came upon someone who I considered to be a friend, and still do, even though there's questionable activities involved, not from my stance, but so that made clear in regard to anyone who has appeared as a guest in my home shouldn't consider themselves to be more important to me than my own biological children. And my biological children should not consider themselves less important to me than any guest that I might have had in my home. So back to because Petrus, both of my children's fathers, who I have defended and stood up for, and said very little negative about, even my first daughter's father, who I spent much more time with. I just don't have that kind of thing in my character. Because my biological children's biological fathers are practically part of me. So in attacking my biological children's fathers, I'm attacking me through my children. And I don't want to do that. And for whatever reason, the Chinese balloon further inflames relations keeps coming up on my screen, because So both of my children's fathers waver back and forth because I now realize and accept the fact that there are probably just 2 other men who have impregnated many other women, because evidently that's just what men do. And my message to them is keep your penises in your pants and your sperm in your sacks, because overpopulation of the earth has reached a point that is, not fun to exist on earth very much these days. And in all their endeavors and using, having, oh my gosh, this is taking me into, on behalf of women, an angry place, and I don't want to go there right now. I want to know, because Petrus obviously was in existence through lineage during the Civil and Confederate War, because he really does have a resemblance to Stonewall Jackson.
Our assumptions of conspiracy
and
being hidden from general consumption. It will, I think, make a lot of us feel a bit.
And all those top secret missions and stuff like that have been held throughout in the CIA and top secret, and who's got the top secret. It's really a chess game. The military becomes such a joke to me, because you start to see clear through all of it. And it's all like a bunch of men who can't get past being king of the world and just being king of their own domain. Well, that's because they've created domains, across continents. And in other words, multiple domains in one in during one existence, because their sperm lives forever and women can't have babies past, or so they say. Now that's even questioned. That what's been accepted as fact menopause is in question. Because believe it or not, you hear all kinds of things, and so men don't want women meddling in things like architecture, and I'm not really in competition of, trying to create the next, building or whatever. I'm trying to find the truth about the origins of one of the houses in which I lived, because it has to do with prostitution and being part of eliminating human trafficking and prostitution, and holding men, no matter what race, creed, or religion they claim to be or not to be it atheist or agnostic or Christian or Jewish or Hebrew or Islamic or Buddhist or whatever they claim to be. The fact of the matter is that men take on this thing where, they think that, oh gosh, I got millions of sperm, I'm just going to go over here and everything's going to be peachy keen, it's going to be world peace, or at least that's what they said. I just don't think that they were thinking through, first of all, the global population issue, the environmental issue, and the world peace issue. Because really, how much peace are you going to have? First of all, if you're impregnating, 100 different women around the world and lying to every one of them, and then on top of that, keeping prostitutes that you're not getting pregnant and taking them traveling around the world and having all kinds of fun, and oh gosh, now I need a place to stay, so let me gotta head over to Maryland, and the mother of my child over here, who's still loyal because she hasn't caught on, And that's the kind of existence that I see men living in, which I never saw before. And so I want my son to know that he doesn't need to do that to be a man. What he needs to do, because that's part of why my sons were taken from me, because I have such a different point of view. And I have been a strong Christian woman who has rejected alcoholism and drug addiction. And I have done so only because I know and accept that Jesus really did set me aside for whatever reason and has empowered me to reject those things.
It is from just before 1600. So this is the only.
But Satan got in and said, "Oh well, she's not going to let us do this, and she's not going to accept this. So we're going to take her sons, and we're going to raise her sons up the way we go." And and that's what they've done. And so, and I want my son to know that he can live in existence. Because I hear all the different stuff that goes on. And they know that I hear. My children know that I can hear. The men and or women who have ill affected my biological children's lives know that I can hear. Just like Jesus can hear. And those people who have called themselves Christians, they act as though like Jesus, that whole omnipresence thing, we'll just shove them in a jar somewhere. So the point of the matter is that I'm not trying to take over men's jobs. And in fact, I really kind of appreciate men in more traditional roles. I like the fact, but what I don't like is that men seem to have like they need to take everything over all the time. And for myself here in the West, the battles that I've been facing are the American Indians and the battles of the United States, the Indian American War, the Civil War, and the Revolutionary War. It just resurfaces. And what people don't understand, or they do, I don't know which. Some people do and some people don't. The more digging that people do, like actually digging, like, and I've told this story before. I was over and I was told that it was actually, what is it called? I forget what it's called. Like when people graffiti, I forget the name of it anyway. And I went over to a county government building and I had a spoon. And I planted carrot seeds, like actually planted carrot seeds. But I had to have a spoon to dig that little divot of dirt out of the thing. And was I trying to start a movement? I was trying to bring people's attention to the fact, and why I chose carrot seeds wasn't a conscious thought, but it's interesting to me now that I chose carrot seeds to plant, like around carrot and lettuce were the two seeds that I. But when I put and dug that small bit of dirt out of the landscaping around the Harford County government building, it was like suddenly I was in the know of all kinds of information. Not suddenly, but gradually. And that was just like 1 tablespoonful of dirt that I took out of the ground. And what these people don't understand, or they don't accept, and so they turn around and they turn their anger at themselves, at me, instead of saying, gosh, she's right. You know, the more we dig, the more the battles that resurface. So with all of this construction and everything, the battles, you can't bury the truth and keep digging and expecting the same stuff not to be circulating, and the same battles keep coming to surface. And I can't fight them all for everybody, and I haven't been trying to. It's simply that I go out into the neighborhood, and like I've stated before, I'm like this with my Wonder Woman bracelets all around me, and I have and I know that my children have been dealing with the same kind of thing. So stop digging with with a mind of destruction and building the tallest building, or being the pharaoh that comes in and finally takes over forever and has his slaves in this level, and his whores on this level, and his wives on this level, and his buddies on this level. And, it's insanity. And not allowing any women to have say, because they've created, not the women, but the men have created a world of war, constant war, where women have, through the ages, been left to themselves to fend for themselves, while the men are out creating more war everywhere they go. And then countering back. And being nasty and vindictive when they can't comprehend, or choose not to comprehend, what they've done. And it's not even a matter only about cheating. It's a matter of the world that they have all created around and containing the innocent in this really defenseless condition, and left to fend for themselves. And then when the biological father's gone, and the man from the other culture comes into town and wants to take over, and who's the and where's her children, and it all becomes about destruction of everything and humans, and it's kind of sickening. And to continue, for the men to continue on the courses that they've followed throughout the ages. And again, I'm not talking about one freaking culture, or one country, or one. They all do the same thing. And to allow a woman to exist in her nurturing, natural and nurturing condition, or state, or intrinsic, is the smartest thing that a man can actually do for himself. And abstinence in that regard, if he's gone out and and fathered other children of other cultures.
Norwegian organist
A woman and
he has found codes in Shakespeare's
women
verse.
are jealous
She believes
when
that Francis
there's
Henry Neville was the true authors of Shakespeare.
betrayal of. It comes down to sexual activity, and I don't care what woman you are. A woman who is having sex with a man expects loyalty from the man. It doesn't matter. And I think the man expects loyalty from a different perspective. A man expects loyalty because it's his ego. A woman expects loyalty because it is such an intimate part of who we are, and reproduction and children and part of our physical being, that it is a much more emotional, it's not an egotistical thing. And it's something that men have not learned yet. And as I've stated for myself, I'm not a violent person until it comes to, if I'm sexually active with a man and he's cheating on me, that's when I become angry enough to not to. I've never become actually, what is the word? I've never acted on my anger, but I've had a lot in regard to particularly my first daughter's father, because he cheated on me on a regular basis, and I've discovered even much more than when we were together. And he actually, and to think back and think of how he pouted and acted as though I didn't have a right to leave him. And then information that I've discovered even more since I left him in 1992 or 3, whatever year that was. It's appalling to me, and he's an insult to his own intelligence in acting in him back then, acting as though he was angry that I left, and like he didn't have a clue, and he played the oh gosh, poor me, she left me kind of thing, knowing his guilt that I was in having an inkling about, not even knowing what was actually going on. And now that I know what was actually going on, I think to myself, oh my gosh, Michael, you have shrunk to this really wonderful man who I had a lot of respect for, even with all the problems that I was aware that we had of, to this big. And I'm not talking about penis size. And it's
obviously I believe this only begetter was.
It's really kind of stupid for men to conduct their lives the way that they have, and then they say it is. You see, it is not. Yes, it is. Yes, it is, because they're still trying to discover which God is the greatest, instead of, and everyone perceives themselves or their God as being a God of peace, or at least the information that I have received, and they're still. It's like every show that I watch, my name is in the subcontextual verbiage. Like sometimes most of the times I can actually hear them saying my name. It's like they're having, they had a conversation, and even that, it can't be covered up because it comes out just like the battles resurface. when they've pre-planned assignment of my younger sister's guilt to me, and then they travel over here, it still all comes out, because here it is, I'm watching Shakespeare and I'm hearing these two guys say my name and they're participating. And this is also an example of time warping and splicing, because whenever this documentary about William Shakespeare was made and presented, is in this guy's mouth, particularly the curly red-haired guy. And so it's yet another twosome that has, because I don't participate in the partying thing, the automatic thing is to my innocence, to what is constant, has been a constant rival, not that I created, but that others purposefully created, and that person being my younger sister Leah. And I think that my younger sister Leah accepted that role like fully and completely, because my younger sister Leah has that need, and always has, to be the most popular and the most sought after. And I find that also to be a stupid existence in and or for a woman to take, because it's arrogant, and it's and the interesting thing is that I've been called combative, and I've been called argumentative, and I'm not. I'm a debatist, yes, but I don't go looking for arguments, and I don't go looking for battle.
Everybody recognizes that the poem carved into the stone is of poor quality.
But the rivalry between me and my younger sister Leah goes so deep because of the betrayal I've experienced from her in her pursuit to become Mark Antony's significant other, and I forget which one, Cleopatra. And I don't have a desire to be the queen of anybody's world. I am a servant of my Lord and Savior Jesus and of my children. And if my biological children's biological fathers could come to their senses and simply put Leah in her place as far as her need to feed on jealousy, and become the new Cleopatra, whether she's lineage to Cleopatra or not, I don't care. That's not the point to me. That's simply yet another battle that my younger sister Leah needs to come to and feel the power of the Egyptian culture and being Cleopatra. Who cares? Who cares? Because those battles are creating war that I'm having to face and my children are having to face on a constant basis, whereby we're the targets, and yet we're not seeking war. We're not seeking to be the king and queen of the world. We're simply seeking to be in each other's own company and in our own, each other's own real-time care. We're not seeking to be the queen of Egypt or the queen of China or the empress of China or the queen of Islam or whatever it is. I don't care who I'm pissing off right now.
There is a method described by
because as I've already stated, no, I feel like I'm the only person that has any true loyalty to anyone or any real
You need a keyword to unlock this. And what do you think that keyword is? Well, I noticed that we have Yeta enclosed by
the
other letters. Okay.
back to, because these men are tuning into again, and this is an example of time warping, because I don't know when this was, but I'm simply using it as a point of research because of the likeness between Andrew Jackson to William Shakespeare. And it connects also because I guess I'm stirring up William Shakespeare because of the joke that I made up and said, what do you get when you cross a Libra with an Aries? Libraries. And my point in that is my first daughter and son are Libras and I am an Aries. And if you use me to piss off my biological children, all these stories come. And that's what everybody keeps doing. Oh, let's piss her off and let's see what angles we can get. And you can write this book over here and we can write this angle. So that's where me and William Shakespeare cross paths in an possibly not so, and all the elaborate theaters and from and then I have another joke. So then that I coined. I'm going to say coined. What do Jesus and Tigger have in common? And it just came to me one day, the riddle. And then here comes Gotham City. As soon as you say the riddle, because of the Riddler and the popularity of that, there's absolutely nothing that you can say. So I said, what do Jesus and Tigger have in common? And I always get a really puzzled look. And to me, it's so completely obvious. I expect everybody that I say it, that I ask it to like, they're the only one. And I know that I'm making my point, and I know that I'm getting through, but I'm needing to know the origins, and I'm needing. I might be needing acknowledgement for recognizing the things that I recognize and realize, only because Jesus is who's showing me the information. Jesus revealed to me things about that house that we were living in. My nephew is involved in what I'm in the information that I'm trying to reveal, because the more truth I can reveal, the more honest lives that the youth can live and start and begin to fight for themselves out of drug addiction, out of alcoholism, and out of prostitution. And so that's my purpose for constantly seeking the truth. I want the truth so that the youth can be empowered to live out of the world of prostitution, alcoholism, and addiction. So the men who are going around who are much older than me and still fathering children because it still works, which to me is absolutely gross. And to rewind for a second, just a second, and to understand as a Christian that a man and a woman who are loyal to each other and they have their own children, for their sex lives to subside and for their children then to produce their own children, is the natural circle of life, of living, of existing. And for men to go around, because it still works and because they still find a need to conquer the world and nature and the bears and the lions and the tigers, and they want to make friends of the snakes, as though the snakes aren't going to devour them one day once the snakes completely take over. And I've said the same thing about spiders, because it's complete insanity. Okay, dude, so you'll be the king of the world, which has no human beings left on it. And I'm not talking about Jesus, because Jesus is I'm talking about men who have gone out literally to conquer the world. And a lot of them actually use the Bible, the Old Testament, to justify their actions all over the world, and talk about another really twisted view of Christianity.
But what I think is as interesting is that.
But it was the modeling industry and the entertainment industry and everything that drew our children into. So it's interesting that we're at Shakespeare and Halston. As for myself, I don't see Shakespeare as a Christian. I see Halston within his existence, and I know he's probably guilty of stuff, the same kind of stuff, being a pimp, whatever. I think that in Halston, I can see Jesus comes through Halston to me.
Does Henry Neville
and
really wrote Shakespeare?
Jesus presents himself to us.
Who do you believe wrote this?
In a person, because there's something that Jesus wants us to see. There's something about that person's existence or that person's character that Jesus wants to reveal to us. And so within Halston, I think Jesus wanted me to see who Halston really was, regardless of his possible guilt of being a pimp. And I'm not who can let Halston off the hook in regard to that. He has to work for that himself. But Jesus has shown me through Halston that it is possible for a person, and I had already really accepted this, because different populations of people who have assumed me because I outright claim to be a Christian, no matter what room I'm in. That others who have practiced either homosexuality, and yes, I am angry about homosexuality, but I'm angry about what it has done to children, to minor age people who cannot exist when homosexual politics have replaced a biological mother's right. Homosexuality had overridden a biological woman's right to raise her own biological children. And that's fact. And I'm sorry, but they need to stop and think. Without heterosexuality, they wouldn't exist. And there has to be a logistical comprehension of what I'm saying coming from the homosexual community, be it men or women. And then, of course, we enter the transgender. And I don't judge, and yet I've been accused of being judging. I don't judge. What you practice in your bedroom, if it's not involving my children, is none of my business. But if you're involving my children in your relationship because you're seeking out custody of my children,
The angle of the elbow is to be a real difference there. And the moustache, very different. This bust of William Shakespeare is believed to have been erected a few years after his death in 1616. Some 30 years later, in 1656, the antiquary and herald Sir William Douglas.
and then there's simply the logistical, scientific, biological fact that no one could exist without the intersection of a sperm and an egg. There would be no humans on Earth.
So what are you suggesting?
Doesn't matter if you were grown in a petri dish, because that was the next defense that I heard. Oh, you think? I was inseminated, and still sperm and an egg, dude. Still sperm and an egg.
So who was this man, William Douglas? His son-in-law.
And then comes the transgender population, and I'm like, look, I'm not judging you. Damn it, listen to me.
Privately admit that he was a Freemason.
So I would suspect that Dugdale was a Mason, and the reason he didn't write about Masonry was because he was a Mason. Masons were absolutely forbidden to write or inscribe anything a particular lodge might regard.
I'm not sending you to prison because you have that you're seeking out a transgender population. But if you're seeking out custody of my children for the purpose of having a transgender, like knowingly, because that's the kind of politics that's being done. That's how Satan is working also. I'm not saying that every transgender has had the same motivation, but I'm saying that when politics and the popularity vote get hold of something that has enough anger generated and enough hype generated about it, then that's what it becomes about.
Was this some kind of existential crisis I was going through?
And then there's the fact that children were transgendered at birth without biological parents knowing or the children knowing. And try to convince me that hasn't gone on. And so it's all been about money. And some transgenders maybe don't realize that. And they're just caught up in this, gosh, I feel like a woman trapped in a man's body, or I feel like a man trapped in a woman's body, because they haven't experienced enough of what politics and money and the economy and how things get hyped up and anger and people and special interest groups and all that stuff. And here's the innocent person who simply got pregnant on a one-night stand. And yes, I'm speaking about myself because, as I have written on my refrigerator in erasable marker, my children were conceived in innocence, regardless of whether it was a one-night stand or not. I did not go out and say, oh gosh, I'm going to find somebody, I'm going to go get pregnant, and then I'm going to get involved here, and then let's see who I can get to buy my baby. And no, my children were conceived in innocence and born into battles of which I was unaware. And there have been many.
So that there's something rather unworthy about it.
Iolo Sigmund is a typographer who knows how they printed books in Shakespeare's time.
His IQ has been measured at 192. He designs his own ciphers for fun and profit, and he's a high-ranking member of a Swedish Masonic lodge. He can recognize symbols, uncover deliberate mistakes, and pronounce with authority on the likelihood of Petter's claims.
So, this is
I'm listening. Sorry, I'm making faces because I'm listening.
Right. The famous Earl.
yes, and here is it in that. I did it
Did you really?
yesterday. Yes. The first visual impression is that someone was out
These two gentlemen on this show are still trying to twist and turn and negate the existence of a non-transgender heterosexual female biological mother of one of the men, mother of the biological children of one of the men who's being spoken about in the thing, because now they just said my second biological children's first name.
Which brings us to page
And this is a storyline in which I know reaches back to Jesus's time, because the name Petrus means rock, and they're still ignoring the fact that this is information that Jesus has already revealed to me. In other words, these two men here in this William Shakespeare documentation are still trying to negate a female's existence in Jesus's world. And I know better.
And even the others as well. There are Rosicrucians and the Freemasonic symbols hidden in quotes.
Now this guy's talking about Lacrucians.
Especially in this situation, suddenly, middle of the sentence,
Which I know very little about, but I know that they're supposedly a violent, yet another, and it's like these cultures. The more people dig, and the more they can find on a culture, and this was a really violent culture, and this and this and this. It's like they're feeding the that culture, like Satan's like trying to get yet another battle stirred up, and let's see what you can do with this Christian over here, and see if you can, and that's just
That leads me.
not, that's just not just.
A collaborative mind.
And it's interesting also that the bottle of Jameson that I was speaking about earlier, I purchased from a liquor store in Lyons, Lyons. And on my way up there, I didn't go up there to purchase the bottle of Jameson. However, on the way up there, there was a truck pulled over on the side of the road, and very frequently, wherever I go, there's always like someone lurking in a car, like with their eyes on me, because you can feel when somebody's watching you. I don't care who you are or whether you want to admit it, because you're strategically, it's strategically better to not admit that you know what she's talking about. And I say otherwise. That if what you're trying to do is live in a peaceful existence with other cultures, that the best thing is to put all your cards on the table and say, look, this is what my and we've got to find a way to live together. So either, you're going to have to stop demanding my biological children, which is really first and foremost on my mind, to bring other cultures and say, you know what, I don't care who's your God is, or who you claim, or what your violent tendencies are throughout history. You don't have a right to claim my biological children.
If they had deployed
Plain and
these
simple.
codes, not only in the first
You didn't
volume,
have a right to
great
take my
sterling
children
sterling
away
slaves,
from me
this must have been massive
because you were
exercise, huge
and
amounts of money.
because you were part of writing the American legal system, which is really just a
Political and social.
really
What on
messed
earth
up
motivated them to do all this?
crock pot of
This must have been
crap.
more than just some clever game
Um,
of words and numbers. What were they hiding?
You didn't have a right, and really
What I'm interested in
neither of my
now is
biological
why,
children's
you know,
fathers have any right to claim my children either. They
They
didn't have a right to, if one or other or both of them sought me out as the egg donor to their sperm. That's not the way that I saw it then. It's not the way that I see it now. I'm a female with a perspective of my children were conceived in innocence and born into battles of which I was unaware.
The Rosicrucian founder, Father R.C.,
And
preserved, buried alongside his most treasured possessions, including his most sacred.
and now it seems that men are taking the perspective, oh, you want to know how it feels to be chasing sperm around and you're laughing or you're making these claims and well, we're going to just sit you in this rape house over here and we're going to make sure you stay pregnant and have babies with different cultures and see if you know. Well, you know what? I didn't send you out to do that, not knowingly. So don't freaking come back here and say you claimed my daughter as the queen bee international womb because you're pissed off because you went out around the world and now you're chasing sperm around with no way to provide for them. And the world is like in complete turmoil, and now the turmoil of the earth has reached the heavens and the solar system, and the men are still blaming the women because, oh, she's a Christian, and that's Eve.
A right angle can be drawn centered on the top. Okay. The Masonic emblem appears, a square encompasses. Containing 2, 3, 4, 5
And
triangles,
so then
53
I don't need to ask how the Muslim men keep their women in check,
This is what all Masons strive for too.
because I'm not a Muslim, and it's up to Muslim women to stand up for themselves, not for me too.
Okay. Dimensions of the symbol are inspired by the book of Genesis.
Jesus has relieved me of other cultures, and what seems to be yet another there seems to be mistakenly from other by other cultures, and I don't know if it was innocently or purposefully, but other cultures seem to have, and this is based on my own experience, and like, you know, why do people think that I'm supposed to carry the cross of their guilt of me? Okay, and this ranges from family members who I grew up under the same roof as into other cultures. Like, why do so many people individually and collectively as populations think that it feels like they think that because I'm a Christian, I'm supposed to carry this big, huge cross of their guilt, not only their guilt, but their guilt of me and my children? Whoa, wait a minute. Well, here's a heads up, because I'm telling you that Jesus has told me, no. When your faith is strong enough, you can stand and say, oh gosh, I think Islam might have few things misconstrued in your minds there, if that's what your perspective is. or Jews over here, and I'm not assigning geographical locations. I'm saying that whoever, and that even being what called themselves Christians also, as in my younger sister Leah. Oh no, Leah, you're not my responsibility to carry your guilt of me and my biological children. I'm not to carry that cross. And I'm just giving you a heads up yet again. And of course, my younger sister Leah claims to be a Christian, or at least she did for a number of years. I haven't spoken to her in real time that I know of. She may have entered my path as a bus driver with a different name, and I'm thinking to myself, gosh, this bus driver looks like my younger sister Leah. Is it my younger sister Leah? And she's just getting a little more bold and thinking she's, and whatever that's about, or is it somebody who's lineage to my younger sister Leah? And you know, the questions just continue to swirl. So and then to realize that whole Gemini Aries thing, and the fact that it truly does feel like it's been set up in the star system, as in whoever created the zodiac system, which is why, as a Christian, I invite Jesus with me to hold my hand, walk with me, carry me through the system that I am researching, because I am a Christian. And for my younger sister Leah to say, oh, well, you can't be a Christian because you look at your horoscope, is a cowardly thing for my younger sister Leah to say, from my viewpoint. And she's not being a very strong representative of Jesus in even trying to see my perspective in what I was trying to tell her a number of years ago. And when I said to my younger sister Leah, I can find Jesus in everything, and I can. And that is what we are supposed to do as Christians. And I'm not saying, perhaps I have said, no, I don't I don't say my younger sister Leah isn't a Christian, but I certainly question her level of faith. In how she's presented herself to me, and to my biological children, and to the entitlements she's taken in, and she's used the Bible to pull people into the Old Testament. And that, to me, that's another area where she had no business, because she had no business pulling my children into the Old Testament. I'm a New Testament Christian, and I'm not a Messianic Christian, and that took my children into places they didn't need to be either. However, Jesus is working it all out and pulling us all through, because yet again, my psyche is being pulled, because I'm constantly, because of, first and foremost, because of my younger sister Leah and her completely different, opposite existence that I've had, and character. And the battles I've had to face, because, and have had to deal with in a completely isolated existence, with only Jesus to turn to, and then somebody tries to turn around and tries to claim, oh, well, we did that purposefully, Dawn, to test your faith.
In a letter to King James
Save
I,
it. Don't
Sir Francis
don't
Bacon
frickin'
revealed
try to
the
convince
cipher
me
in
of
which
that.
English letters
Talk
were
to
written.
Jesus, because
By using this system,
I
the first
will,
folio
I
was
shall,
anagram
there's
quotes.
no way anyone is going to convince me that he set me aside, yes, but he set me aside to be strong enough to not go to the parties and not indulge in of the level that others has. He did not set me aside, otherwise he would not have given me and granted me children and sent me a dream,
Two constellations in the immediate vicinity of
an imagery
also associated in mythology.
where I knew the next day that I was forgiven for the 2 abortions, and that I was granted children by my Lord and Savior Jesus, because he knew he was setting me aside, and he did not intend for me to be completely isolated without any companionship at all.
But I presume probably not that many times. That's right. The constellation Boötes is not mentioned in any of Shakespeare's plays, but the constellation Wain is. So how many? Just once. Is one of the Henrys? That's right. Yeah, which one? Henry IV Part 2 or 1? 1. And where did we find Bacon? Also in Henry IV Part 1. Yeah, we did we? Oh my God, it's page 53. I was experiencing some of that thrill of discovery that had kept Petter moving from code to code, each one in a seemingly perfect alignment. What were the odds of all this? In addition to Wain and Bacon, the word boots, spelled like the constellation Boötes, is printed on this page. What happens if we draw this line? Petter draws a straight line between the 2 constellations. There is an expression up here called eggs and butter, but more often think of eggs and bacon. If we connect these, Petter draws a new straight line between the words butter and bacon. You see, I am in the middle. We insert a compass. You see, the bees have the same relationship with the I am in the middle. And not only that, my friend, if you connect these lines, you get a 6x7 setup.
I should explain my hand movements right now, because as these 2 gentlemen are talking, and I need to, they're not taking into consideration, because Petrus is always in judgment of me when he is, because he seeks to justify his own actions, and he uses me to do such. And Petrus also is a form of Peter. Peter being the prophet who betrayed Jesus 3 times.
You know what God is calling himself? Well, I mean, God's
And I want to point out this show that's playing Shakespeare, did the most famous man in Elizabethan England even exist? 7 Steps Chronicle. There was something I wanted to refer to, which brought me back to, the trip to Lyons and the Lucretians or whatever, that because for some reason the guy on the side of the road, when I went up to Lyons where I purchased the bottle of Jameson, there was a man in a pickup truck on the side of the road, and there was a really horrible stench coming from it would seem like from the truck, and the truck seemed like it was sitting there waiting for me. And when I smelled what I smelled, I stopped and I asked
that rightfully should have been there.
but the person behind the wheel, for whatever reason, at that particular time,
The temple there now, obviously.
the
Well,
Lucretians were coming up in all the popular topics of the shows that I watch. And the person behind that wheel, for whatever, connected in my mind as a representative of the Lucretian people. Now, I have very little information and had no reason to think that,
Could it be that this is what the Rosicrucians are referring to?
except for
The urge
it's
to look for the
it
grave
just
of
seems
Barbara.
to be. And then
The grave is also supposed to
came,
contain a lamp.
because of the likeness of that person to someone from my younger sister Leah's heyday time, which I don't know if she ever really left the partying scene.
Which is treasure man needs to.
But
And in this light, the authorship question becomes visible.
see, these are all about the drama and the
What do you think? Is
and the
interesting? Yeah, absolutely.
angle that can be presented. And
You're listening. Yeah, I'm absolutely listening. Yeah.
but there was a likeness of the guy behind that the wheel said, for whatever reason, that person was connecting in my mind as a representative of the Lucretian culture.
One of his poems,
Um,
Johnson reveals that he
ancient
knows about the
Roman
chimera with the rosy cross. In
legendary,
Greek mythology, the chimera is a beast composed of a lion's head.
but he has a likeness to one of my younger sister Leah's partying buddies from,
Leo's head.
and that particular
Dragon's tail.
buddy went back to our childhood from like middle school age.
And he found
Means weight,
she's the good.
coca means
Immediate vicinity of Boötes and Wain. But there is one piece missing. And it is Ben Jonson who reveals the last constellation in a dedicated
About a certain bird. Sweet Swanhaven.
Ben Jonson named Shakespeare the Swan, a swan that can also be seen in the sky.
Stay, I see thee in the hemisphere advanced, and made a constellation there, shine forth thou star of poets. He says, you are a constellation.
The Cygnus.
Cygnus. It's called the Northern Cross. And by some, it has been thought to be a prophecy for Christianity.
Oh, okay, right. So God has placed that constellation in the sky. It's a signal for humanity that ultimately Christ will come.
Wouldn't that be a great spot for a temple?
Yeah. The swan completes the map. Petter believes that the Masonic symbol is constructed in the sky. The swan's biggest star is located exactly at the point where the 30
and this guy, what he's saying, this seems like a non-committal person to any philosophy other than their own egos. Both of these men seem to be, and how they can make their mark in history because they haven't been able to in an honest basis, and they still need to go back to thereby creating battles yet again, and bringing to surface battles and creating new ones, new angles, and trying to convince myself and or other Christians that someone,
It becomes very difficult to explain
which is
away
the same way the
that
mystics
level of acrostic coincidence.
and the three kings of Orient are
There are more
um,
37, and there are more stars.
labeled the stars in a certain way and created the zodiac system and the constellation system. Jesus didn't name the constellations, man did.
Aligned, and it's a perfect right angle here to the word Buddhist. Buddhist. And this is on page 37 of
these two men are still trying to negate the, first of all, the value of a female, and the existence of women
Geometry fits.
in Jesus's world.
Page numbers refer to angles in the symbols in the sky. Deneb is also
And
the
I
seventh
think
step
that
in the
that has to do
constellations.
only with her own
God's mercy.
guilt within the human trafficking system, because the entertainment industry and the world of theater and the world of carnival and the world of famous singers is all about human trafficking, is where it all starts, and prostitution and politics. And so I'm not trying to be a part of any of that, except for presenting the real-time truth of things.
In the sky, and then choose as above, so below. This is what I think is the true purpose of all this. Because we are thinking in terms of
And how much truth can a person, and I've already presented that, how much truth can a person present when they're traveling around the world using aliases? And so in their presentation, it automatically becomes an opportunity for them to manipulate through the ages, like that they're entering into an era of William Shakespeare and saying, oh, well, this is what happened and this is what happened. Well, you can't present a truth as unless you're living in real time and are living an honest life, regardless of what secret society has given you the creative license to present something otherwise. And I don't accept such a license. And I think they just realized that even in their own pursuit of it, and so I'm thinking about that bottle of Jameson and all, and the connections and the timing. And the Stonewall Jackson thing, and and how that all comes into play. And Andrew Jackson was president at what time? Andrew Jackson, W.W. according to Britannica, that is. Because it, I, I believe that presidents have also taken on aliases, faked their death, and taken aliases and lived in other. I'm just using this as an example to sort of give anyone who's that just because this says Andrew Jackson was born March 15th, 1767, and just because it was so long ago and they didn't have cosmetic back then and blah, blah, blah. And just because it was born in 1767 doesn't having so much experience of observation of what I've experienced, observed,